Well, Denton, we've had this brief survey, very brief survey, albeit, of the Old Testament Promised Land, the lineage. Let's take a look at the command now. Okay. What exactly did God command Abraham to do in Genesis 12:1?
Okay. If we go back and look at Genesis 12:1, the first verse, let me read it again, because now the Lord said to Abram, "Go forth from your country and from your relatives and from your father's house to the land which I will show you." And we just break that down and look at it here. The first command that God gave is go forth. The whole idea of leaving, of being separated from what you've been comfortable with, what you've been used to, family, country, and even your father's house. And so, and we sense that same command in Matthew 28:18, where Jesus says, "Go and make disciples." There's a need for us in responding to God's initiative in our lives to go, to not just stay, to not just hold on, to not just hang around, but to go. And it's so, disruptive. Yeah, it is disruptive.
Yeah.
But anything that's worth holding on to is, eternally is going to be disruptive. You know, because our pattern is to go the other way. So anyway, so go forth. Then he says, I want you to go to the land. And so you stop and you begin to say, what did this Jewish nation that had just in its birth pangs, what did they need? They needed a place. They needed, you know,
to settle someplace.
Yeah. And so God provided that place. He had already picked out this land of Canaan. And so God creates the environment for us to be able to live out what He is asking us to do and what He wants to do in our lives. In Ephesians 1, I thought of this the other night. The passage there in Ephesians 1, I believe it starts with verse 18 and follow. It says, in essence, here's the Cormany paraphrase. It says that he says, "I pray that the eyes of your hearts will be opened, that you'll experience the hope of His calling, the fact that we are His inheritance, and that God has given us the same power as He gave to Christ in order for Him to be raised from the dead." And so you translate that into language that we can understand. Literally, God's call was literally this hope. It's security, something that every human being needs in our lives. We need security. But then He follows that with the fact of significance. Every one of us need to matter. There's something built into the human DNA that needs to be noticed, needs to be valued, needs to have purpose. And so God here says, in this relationship with Christ, you are His inheritance. Yes, we've got an inheritance from Him, but we're His inheritance. Stop and let that sink in. I mean, it's like, whoa. But then He says, not only do we have security, significance, but I'm going to give you the sufficiency. Whatever you need to accomplish what I'm calling you to do, I'll give it to you. So God wanted to establish this Jewish nation, both physically but also spiritually, and we see that being passed on to us. So the next thing that He says there in that passage is He says, "I will bless you. I will go with you. I will protect you. I will do all these things." And we begin to realize this is unconditional. God doesn't say, if you do these things, then I will. No, He says, okay, Abraham, I will make you a great nation. I will bless you. I will give you a great name. I will do these things. And so what we need to realize in our lives, the promise from God is never conditional. Our experiencing it is determined by whether we obey or by faith trusting.
That goes back to the choice that you were mentioning earlier.
So Abraham began to trust God's heart, and he was willing to immediately go and do what God showed him to do. And then the last part of that, and I will show you the whole idea of I will show you this land that you're going to go into. I don't need to describe it to you now. I'll show you, you know. And we begin to realize that God has made us in need of revelation. We need God to reveal himself to us. It's not a matter of, think of what life would be like if only the smartest ones were included. If only the ones who have the ability to understand and apply and whatever were the only ones. And we begin to realize, you know, God has chosen to reveal to us wherever we are, whatever our needs are, whatever our intellect is, whatever our background is. And then it says, Jesus' own words, he says, I have come to reveal my Father to all of us. And so we see this beginning here in Genesis 12, but then flowing through, on down through Scripture.
My goodness, thank you, Denton. So we began with the promise of the promised land, seeing it move through the lineage. That's our heritage. And then we saw the command, that God gave a command to Abraham, and Abraham chose to respond. In our next segment, we're going to talk about our response, not just Abraham's, but what about the Israelites? And what about you and me?